hope everyone's doing well. Everyone's doing good. Hello, YouTube. And hello, Twitter. Currently, as you can see, lots of Overwatchers hanging out and stuff and games, just trying to have a good time. Mostly what I wanted to do for today's video. And that is the main goal of today's video, is just to yap. And ask what your guys' opinion is. Now, as a person who has a majority of their playtime on, I believe, DPS, but also has a major substantial amount of playtime on both support and tank, I meant. So I have a bit of an opinion from like all sorts of stuff. What it's like. I'm not at any of them. I might actually have more playtime on DPS than I do on support, so I don't know if that's the case. I think. Like, I will say though, as a like person who plays a decent bit of tank and stuff like that, I'm very certain on how I feel about how tank is in Overwatch and how tank should be. And I will say that it could be a bit of a hot take depending on who you ask, because if you ask the average Reddit user who weighs 300 pounds, then they'll mention the fact that solo tanking is fine, because the DPS players and the support players take up more of the people in the game. But, you see, the issue that I have with that is mostly just coming down to the fact that I understand that the majority of the players. That's expected because it's two different roles. But as well as that, even if you're talking about like purely DPS, or I mean even purely support probably as well, that they likely end up having a majority of the balance decisions towards them. Because even if you're talking about purely like one or the other, they still make up a majority of the player base person. Even if you're not counting them like alongside each other. And so, to an extent, purely based off of that, I can understand the idea of balance is purely based on because it correlates properly. It makes sense. Hey, these guys make up the majority of our players. It's not purely based around that. But where my issue lies in that sort of thinking is the idea that really focusing on that leads you to have the same issues that Dead by Daylight does. Because, oh hey, they focus on one group of players. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily this is how they balance or anything like that. Like, I need to go and read all of the patch notes for the past couple of seasons and stuff like that. But from what I can tell from the recent balance patches that I've seen and stuff like that, they have been balancing a decent amount more so towards support players and DPS players to make their experience better as compared to purely like tanks, and especially not purely towards the higher skill tanks like Doomfist and stuff like that. What the hell is that? Because in my opinion, I find Doomfist to be a high skill tank. You can have a different opinion on that, and I think that if you do, that's understandable. But I think that overall, in comparison, Doomfist is a decently high skill. And he requires skill to play, especially in comparison to a character, at least in my feelings, like Malga, who you load in as Malga, you hold down LT, and then you hold down RT after you get LT to set something on fire. And then after you shoot them enough and they're either dead or you're dead, then you keep on running it back. And you also just can't play Orisa or Roadhog against Malga unless you're in 66, because otherwise you lose. But the whole entire thing is that I find the balancing of Overwatch to be very difficult, especially because they switched it to 5v. And now the issue with them switching it to 5v5, in my opinion, is there's a lot of issues with it. But the main one that I wanted to point out is it does kind of fit into what I was saying about focusing on one side but not the other. Because that's kind of how that works with tank. Because tank is the one being screwed over in 5v5. Even though you're arguably making the tanks stronger in 5v5, because they have to be OP, that still doesn't mean that they're fun to play because you're stuck solo. Overwatch is a team game where, you know, every other role is going to have 2 players of it on each team. Each team is going to have 2 players on the same role, no matter what. Unless you're in like open queue or something like that, and your whole team queues up as supports, and then you have like 1 DPS. But like, unless like that's the case, then obviously you're gonna have like 2, like 1, 2, 2. You know, that's like going to be the average team comp for the average player, because the average player, from what I can tell, plays 5v5. But how do you think that feels for the average tank? Like, that might not feel great because you're the only tank in your team, and as well as that also, you're the only person able to do tank like tank. Like, granted, you can have a, like, DPS player play, like, Brig and tank partially with her, like, mini shield. Or you can, like... Oh, yeah, that was dumb. But, or you could also, like, have, like, a Reaper, like, go and, like, help you by just having extra HP and just being able to go up close and do a ton of damage and get out. Like, stuff like that. You can have a player that can do that sort of stuff. Yes. But is that player going to be the same level as a tank in terms of doing that stuff? No. And most of the time, that player's not even going to be wanting to do that. Unless you're, like, actively, like, trying to get that to be a thing. Like, unless you're actively trying to make that player who's playing DPS, like, do that exact thing as that DPS, then that's not going to be happening. Like, that will not be the case, like, ever. Which is tragic, because a lot of tanks, from what I've been able to tell as of recently, don't like fucking solo tanking. I know I'm included in that as well. Because solo tanking, in my opinion, is the worst feeling in the game. When you compare how it feels to play tank in 66, when you actually have a decent team with you, like you have a decent tank, and you have like, you have another tank with you, you have 2 DPSs, and you have 2 supports. Your team doesn't even have to be good. They just have to know how the game works. They just have to kind of understand it. So you have to be in like a decent lot, at the very least. But that feeling of, oh hey, the people around me, even if you're against a better team and you're losing and you lose, the feeling of, oh hey, I'm not the only tank here. It's not being completely blamed on me, and it's not being completely put on me, despite the fact that I'm, you know, the only person here, because, you know, I'm not the only person here anymore. I'm not the only tank in this lobby on my team. I'm not the only person who can do these sort of tanky things. I have another teammate here to help me out, and I can coordinate with him. I can play Reinhardt, and he plays Zarya, or he can play Roadhog. I play Mauga in case they counterpick the Roadhog. I can play Winston, and I can go dive while he plays like Reinhardt and main tank. And I can go dive with Winston or Wrecking Ball, and I can go do this, and I can go do that. And my teammates can also go do so much more, because they have 2 tanks to play around. It just allows for a higher level of play for everyone, and it allows, in my opinion, for a better feeling of play for everyone. I will say this, that I think that purely based off of both competitiveness and off of feeling, 66 is better than 5. If you have other opinions, like it's better for casuals to be like having like 5v5, then sure. But 66 is a better competitive and a better feeling game than 5v5. By far. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is because it's so much more fun to have another player on your team in general, but also another player to play around. Another player to play tank around. Another player to play tank against. Another player to focus your DPS comp around, your support comp around. Because, oh my gosh, I don't just have to focus on one tank anymore, I have to focus on two. But I can also run stuff to benefit both of them, or I can run stuff purely to benefit one, and then my other support can do the same. Like, there's so many options because of that. And in my opinion, that provides the best gameplay feeling that Overwatch can provide to any player. Is allowing the people to have options and allowing the people to have more stuff available in their game to play around and to play with. Because that feels so much better. To have two tanks on your team. To have two tanks on your team and have them play around each other. Or play with one other tank who's your friend or even a random and just play around them and just have to try to adapt to what they're doing at the same time, and also have to adapt to what the enemies are doing. Because, oh hey, it's not just my team that has two tanks now. It's the other team. Like, I don't know, that may just be me, but that just provides such a better feeling, and that's why I hate the idea of balancing mostly around supports and DPSs, because if you're balancing around them, then tanks are completely ignored, and that's why 5v5 is a thing in the first place. Is because a lot of, you can check like whatever you want. A lot of players in DPS and support find that to be a better experience. Because, oh hey, I have to think less. And oh hey, I have to do less for this sort of situation. Well, that's not the entire thing. And hell, that might not even be the majority. That might have just been the majority from what I saw. And I might have been looking at the wrong person. But from what I've seen, that is how a lot of players feel in the DPS and support world. Is that 5v5 is better because one, it's easier, and then as well as that also it feels better to just have a singular, like, two DPSs that can kill it, like, that can focus on one tank and just constantly win team fights, really just based off of the fact that, oh hey, there's one less tank, and so you have way less stuff to play against. You have way less thought that you're playing the tank. There's a lot less that goes into 5v5 as compared to 6v6. And now if that's a reasoning as to why you like 5v5 over 6v6, that's fair. I'm not going to hate on you for that. Hell, I'm not even hating on anyone for these sorts of opinions, bro. Like, if you feel that sort of way, then good for you, dog. Because if you like one sort of thing specifically about a game mode, that's amazing. And that's lovely to hear, because that means that you at least are enjoying something about the game. And that means you're at least enjoying the game to some extent. But my whole entire issue is the people who think that the game needs to be balanced in one way purely because of how they feel or how well, that's just my opinion. If you feel differently, then let me know. I'm very curious to hear you guys' comments. I cannot wait to get flamed. But, yeah, curious to hear what you guys have to say. But either way, though, I appreciate all of you. I hope that you all have a good and lovely day. I shall see you guys all in the next one, man. Make sure to like and subscribe. And peace out, chat.